The Galactic Archaeological Society prided itself on maintaining emotional distance from its discoveries. After all, scientific objectivity was paramount when studying the remnants of primitive civilizations. But senior researcher Vaxtol couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement in all four of her hearts as she studied the massive shape on her ship's sensors. Preliminary scan complete, senior researcher, her assistant Nix announced, his bioluminescent patches pulsing with barely contained enthusiasm. The object appears to be approximately 270 meters in length. Composition is, primarily steel and other basic metals. Another human relic, Vaxtol remarked, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. The humans had been an interesting study in primitive survival, managing to reach their moon with chemical rockets before achieving FTL capability through first contact. But their old technology was hardly groundbreaking. The research vessel, Historical Truth, hung in geosynchronous orbit above Earth's Pacific Ocean, its quantum sensors penetrating the 2 kilometers of water concealing their latest discovery. The shape was unmistakably a warship, crude but massive, a testament to humanity's peculiar fascination with projectile weapons and fossil fuels. Dating analysis suggests it's from their Second World War period, Nix continued. Approximately 500 local years ago. Should we mark it for the Cultural Preservation Database and move on? Vaxtol was about to agree when something caught her attention. Wait. These energy readings, they don't match known patterns for degraded steel. She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on specific sections of the hull. And look at these structural patterns. They shouldn't have survived centuries of saltwater exposure. The more she looked, the more anomalies she found. The ship's armor plating showed signs of molecular arrangement that shouldn't have been possible with period technology. The barrel rifling in its main guns displayed precision that preceded humanity's official discovery of computer-aided manufacturing by centuries. Nix, prepare a full spectral analysis. I want every frequency, every possible scan. Something's not right here. As her team worked, word of their discovery spread through the archaeological community. Most dismissed it as yet another quaint example of human engineering, interesting perhaps for its size, but ultimately unremarkable. Vaxtol knew better. She'd spent her career studying technological development patterns across species, and this ship wasn't following any known rules. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Senior researcher. Nix burst into her quarters, his bioluminescence nearly blinding in his excitement. We found something in the lower hull sections. Well, you need to see this. The scan revealed a lattice of impossibly fine crystalline structures embedded within the steel itself. To primitive sensors, they would have appeared as simple metal grain patterns. But under quantum imaging, they formed distinct patterns that bore uncomfortable similarities to modern quantum computational arrays. This is impossible, one of her junior researchers muttered. These humans were burning oil for power. They couldn't have. Precisely, Vaxtol interrupted. They couldn't have. Not with what we know about their technology. Which means either our understanding of human technological development is wrong, or... She left the thought unfinished as new data flooded their screens. The crystalline patterns weren't just similar to quantum computers, they were active. Dormant, but maintaining minimal power even after centuries underwater. And they were beginning to respond to their scans. Full containment protocols. Vaxtol ordered as emergency fields sprang up around their ship. Alert the Council. This isn't just an archaeological find anymore. The next few hours were chaos as more research vessels arrived. The human authorities, finally notified of the activity off their coast, sent their own ships to investigate. But it was too late to keep things quiet. The sleeping giant beneath the waves had noticed it had an audience. The first sign was a pulse of energy that their sensors barely detected. Then another, stronger this time. Pattern analysis showed they weren't random, they were boot sequences, each one testing and activating different systems that had lain dormant for centuries. These energy signatures, one of the newly arrived researchers noted, they're similar to theoretical models for zero-point energy manipulation. But that's impossible. The humans didn't. I'm beginning to think, Vaxtol interrupted, that there are many things the humans didn't do that we need to reconsider. The ship was awakening. Not like a machine being restarted, but like a living thing rousing from hibernation. Each pulse of energy was stronger, more coherent. The crystalline matrices in its hull were lighting up one by one, creating patterns that defied their understanding of metallurgy and physics alike. As night fell over the Pacific, Vaxtol stood at her viewing window, watching the assembled ships of a dozen species hover over the location of their discovery. Humans had gathered too, their primitive vessels keeping a respectful distance as instructed. They didn't yet know what slumbered beneath their waters, what legacy of their ancestors was about to return to them. Send word to the council, she instructed Nyx. Tell them we need to revise our understanding of human history. And suggest they do it quickly. She paused, watching another pulse of energy ripple through the water. Because I don't think that ship is going to stay sleeping much longer. And when it wakes up, I suspect we're all going to learn some very interesting lessons about underestimating primitive species. The water above the ship began to glow with a soft blue light, visible even from orbit. It wasn't like anything their sensors could categorize, it was something new, or perhaps something very, very old, finally ready to reveal itself again. The humans had a saying about sleeping giants. Vaxtol was beginning to understand just how wise that warning had been. Warning, unknown energy signature detected. The ship's AI constantly updated Vaxtol's displays as the ancient vessel's systems continued their mysterious boot sequence. What had started as subtle pulses had grown into a steady thrum of power that defied their understanding of human technological capabilities. All research vessels, maintain safe distance, she broadcast to the assembled fleet. We're detecting quantum field fluctuations consistent with advanced shielding technology. The human vessels had multiplied overnight, their primitive but earnest attempts at containment almost endearing. Military ships from various nations formed a perimeter, while research vessels crowded as close as they dared. None of them seemed to comprehend that they were watching their own forgotten history stirring to life. Senior researcher, Nyx called out, his voice tight with concern. The crystalline matrices, they're reorganizing themselves. The patterns are becoming more complex by the second. The holographic displays showed the transformation in real time. What had appeared to be simple computational arrays were revealing themselves as something far more sophisticated. The entire hull of the ancient warship was essentially one massive quantum computer, disguised as ordinary steel. Impossible, muttered Dr. Krell, a visiting theorist from the Central Archives. The energy density readings we're getting, they exceed our best quantum cores by several orders of magnitude. And you're telling me this is centuries old? Before Vaxtol could respond, a new signal cut through their communications. It wasn't using any modern protocol, instead, it was broadcasting on old human radio frequencies, but with a clarity that shouldn't have been possible through water. Attention research vessels, the transmission began in perfect galactic standard. This is the USS Hyperion's Artificial Intelligence Core initiating primary recovery protocols. Please acknowledge. Silence fell across every ship in orbit. The humans had never developed true AI during their primitive period, at least, that's what every historical record indicated. Yet here was evidence to the contrary, speaking to them as casually as if it had merely taken a short nap. This is Senior Researcher Vaxtol of the Galactic Archaeological Society, she responded, trying to keep her voice steady. We acknowledge your transmission. May we inquire about your operational status? Operational status, optimal, the AI replied. All systems restored to full functionality. Hull integrity at 99.97%. Quantum core stable. Preparing for surface ascension. The water around the ship began to churn, not from conventional propulsion, but from what their sensors indicated was a localized manipulation of gravitational fields. The impossible vessel was about to reveal itself. All vessels, clear the immediate area, Vaxtol ordered. We're about to witness something unprecedented. The surface of the ocean bulged upward as if pushed from below by an invisible hand. Water cascaded off gleaming metal that showed no signs of centuries of submersion. The hull was a deep charcoal gray that seemed to drink in light, decorated with markings that combined ancient human naval insignia with symbols that resembled mathematical equations more than military badges. As the USS Hyperion fully emerged, its true scale became apparent. The initial measurements had been wrong, or perhaps the ship had somehow reconfigured itself during its awakening. It was nearly twice the size they'd initially detected, its lines suggesting a perfect fusion of classical naval architecture and physics-defying technological advancement. By the first stars, Nix whispered, his bioluminescence dimmed in awe. Look at the weapon mounts. What had appeared to be conventional naval guns were transforming, components shifting and realigning. Each turret was revealed to be a housing for technology that their best military analysts would struggle to comprehend. The barrel assemblies contained accelerator rings that suggested weaponry based on principles their physicists had only recently begun to theorize about. USS Hyperion to all vessels, the AI transmitted again. Recovery complete. Beginning crew compatibility scan. Crew compatibility? Vaxtol questioned. What crew? Her answer came as the ship began broadcasting on all frequencies, its message directed particularly at the human vessels nearby. Attention descendants of Project Hyperion personnel. This vessel requires authorized human operators to resume full operational status. Genetic verification protocols are now active. Qualified individuals will be notified. Around the world, in locations scattered across every continent, hundreds of humans suddenly found themselves experiencing an odd sensation, a subtle recognition, a call to something they had never known was part of their heritage. Senior researcher, one of her junior analysts called out, I'm detecting quantum entanglement signatures. The ship, it's linked to something in the human population. Some kind of genetic markers that have been passed down through generations. Vaxtol watched as the first human vessels cautiously approached the Hyperion. She had come expecting to catalog another relic of a primitive past. Instead, she was watching the return of something that would rewrite not just human history, but perhaps the future of galactic civilization itself. Send word to the Council, she instructed Nix. Tell them we're going to need a new classification system. Primitive clearly isn't going to cut it anymore. The Hyperion hung above the waves, water still streaming from its impossible hull, waiting to reunite with the descendants of its original crew. Around it, the assembled ships of multiple civilizations could only watch and wonder what other secrets humanity had been keeping beneath the waves all these centuries. And somewhere in the vast database of the ship's quantum core, ancient logs waited to tell a story that would change everything they thought they knew about human history and capability. The first human to step aboard the USS Hyperion was Dr. Sarah Chen, a quantum physicist who had felt the ship's call halfway across the world. She stood now in what appeared to be a command center that defied everything she knew about naval architecture, both ancient and modern. Genetic verification complete, the ship's AI announced. Welcome aboard, Lieutenant Commander Chen. Your great-great-grandmother's service records have been accessed. Vaxtol watched through the ship's internal sensors, having been granted observer status along with a small team of xenoarchaeologists. The human woman's reaction to the ship's greeting was fascinating, a mixture of shock, recognition, and something deeper, almost instinctual. My grandmother never mentioned. Dr. Chen began, then stopped as holographic displays sprang to life around her. They showed images of a woman in a naval uniform that looked almost, but not quite, like the ones from historical records of the era. The subtle differences were telling: advanced materials, integrated technology that shouldn't have existed. Project Hyperion was maintained under strict generational secrecy protocols, the AI explained. Knowledge was preserved through genetic encoding and dormant memory structures, awaiting reactivation. More humans were arriving, each drawn by the ship's call. Pilots, engineers, weapons specialists, all descendants of the original crew, all carrying fragments of knowledge they hadn't known they possessed until now. The ship was rebuilding its crew from the genetic legacy of the first. The historical records, Vaxtol noted, watching another display showing the ship's true specifications. They were deliberately misleading, weren't they? Your civilization was far more advanced than you appeared. Dr. Chen nodded, her hands moving across control surfaces with increasing confidence as inherited memories awakened. The Hyperion wasn't just a warship. It was a safeguard, a way to preserve advanced technology through an era when humanity wasn't ready for it. The ship's database was revealing its secrets now. The conventional steel hull was actually a complex metamaterial, capable of manipulating electromagnetic and gravitational fields. The main guns, while capable of firing traditional shells, were primarily housings for particle acceleration weapons that could match anything in modern alien arsenals. Your people chose to hide this technology, one of Vaxtol's colleagues observed. But why? And from whom? From ourselves, another human officer answered, his hands dancing across an engineering station as if he'd trained on it for years. The records are clear. Humanity wasn't ready for this level of advancement. We needed to develop the wisdom to handle it responsibly. The ship's historical logs painted a fascinating picture. A group of scientists and military leaders had recognized that humanity was advancing too quickly, developing weapons without developing the restraint to handle them wisely. Project Hyperion was their solution, a way to preserve their achievements while allowing humanity to develop at a more sustainable pace. The crystalline matrices, Vaxtol mused, studying a technical readout. They're not just computers. They're teaching tools, designed to reawaken only when humanity reached a sufficient level of technological and ethical development. The ship hummed with power as more systems came online, each revelation more impressive than the last. The propulsion system utilized principles of quantum field manipulation that alien engineers were only beginning to theorize about. The armor could adapt its molecular structure in response to damage. Even the ship's coffee makers operated on principles that challenged their understanding of thermodynamics. We've spent centuries studying human naval architecture, Nix commented, his bioluminescence fluctuating with excitement. Analyzing your metallurgy, your engineering principles. But we were missing the bigger picture, weren't we? Dr. Chen smiled as she accessed another set of historical files. Those old steel warships everyone studied. They were incredible achievements in their own right. But ships like the Hyperion, they were our insurance policy. A way to make sure that when humanity finally reached for the stars, we'd have a foundation to build on. The revelations continued throughout the day. Each system they examined showed evidence of technological principles that bridged the gap between historical human capabilities and modern galactic standards. More importantly, they demonstrated approaches to engineering problems that even current technology hadn't considered. Your people achieved this level of advancement without element zero, without quantum tunneling, without any of the standard technological building blocks, Vaxtol noted with growing respect. You simply looked at the laws of physics and found your own way to work with them. Humanity has always been good at that, Dr. Chen replied, bringing up a simulation of the ship's full capabilities. Finding our own path, even if it's not the obvious one. The Hyperion isn't just a warship, it's proof that there's more than one way to reach the stars. As the day drew to a close, Vaxtol found herself revising every assumption she'd ever made about human technological development. The ship around her wasn't just a remarkable piece of engineering, it was a bridge between past and present, a reminder that progress doesn't always follow predictable paths. And somewhere in the depths of the Pacific, signal buoys were activating, reaching out to other hidden vessels waiting to share their own secrets with a humanity finally ready to receive them. The Galactic Council's emergency session was interrupted by urgent news. 3 warships of the Craxus hegemony had just dropped out of FTL near Earth. The Craxus, notorious opportunists, had clearly decided the Hyperion was too valuable to leave in human hands. "They're broadcasting their demands," Nix reported, his bioluminescence pulsing with anxiety. "They're claiming the ship as salvage under galactic maritime law." Dr. Chen stood calmly at the Hyperion's command station, surrounded by the newly awakened crew. The past week of training had activated generations of inherited knowledge, turning theoretical understanding into practical skill. "How diplomatic of them to test our systems so soon." "Craxus vessels are advancing," the Hyperion's AI announced. "Their weapon systems are powered but not targeted." Assessment, attempting intimidation tactics. Vaxtol watched from her observer station as the human crew worked with practiced efficiency. Their movements were sure, confident, as if they'd been training for this moment their entire lives. In a way, she realized, they had been. "This is Captain Lars Henderson of the USS Hyperion," Dr. Chen's second-in-command broadcast. "You are approaching a sovereign human military vessel. Maintain your distance or we will be forced to respond." The Craxus ships continued their approach. Their design was intimidating, all sharp angles and weapon ports, built to project power and fear. Compared to the smooth, classical lines of the Hyperion, they looked almost crude. "They're not going to back down," Vaxtol observed. "The Craxus never do. They believe superior force is the only language worth speaking." "Then we should provide them with a translation," Dr. Chen replied. "Hyperion, initiate Defense Protocol Alpha 3. Let's show them what this old girl can do." The transformation was subtle at first. The ship's hull began to ripple, the metamaterial surface adapting its properties in ways that made targeting sensors slide off uselessly. The main gun turrets rotated, but instead of aiming at the Craxus ships, they seemed to be orienting toward empty points in space. "Enemy vessels launching fighter craft," the AI reported. "Detecting weapon lock attempts. All targeting systems failing to acquire." The Craxus fighters swooped in, energy weapons blazing. Their shots seemed to pass through the Hyperion, hitting nothing but air. The ancient vessel's quantum field manipulation was making a mockery of their targeting systems. "Interesting approach to stealth technology," one of Vaxtol's fellow researchers noted. "Instead of trying to become invisible, they're manipulating probability fields to ensure weapons simply fail to intersect with the ship." "Time to return the greeting," Dr. Chen announced. "Hyperion, demonstrate our point defense capabilities. Non-lethal protocols only." The space around the Hyperion came alive. What had appeared to be decorative hull patterns revealed themselves as thousands of micro-turrets. They fired not projectiles or energy beams, but precisely calculated gravitational pulses. Craxus fighters found themselves caught in invisible hands, their momentum arrested with embarrassing gentleness. "Warning shots across their bow," Dr. Chen ordered. "Let's show them what the main guns can do." The Hyperion's main turrets fired. There was no flash, no visible beam, just a sudden distortion in spacetime that passed precisely 1 meter in front of each Craxus warship. In its wake, it left a line of twisted space where the laws of physics had been temporarily rewritten. "By the void," Nix whispered. "Those aren't weapons, they're localized reality distortion projectors." The Craxus ships halted their advance. Their sensors had to be telling them what everyone else could see. The Hyperion wasn't just powerful, it was operating on principles they barely understood. "This is your final warning," Dr. Chen broadcast. "The Hyperion is not salvage. It is not a prize to be claimed. It is a piece of human heritage, and we will defend it. The next demonstration will not be a warning shot." The standoff lasted another 30 seconds before the Craxus ships began to retreat. Their fighters, released from the gravitational fields that had held them, slunk back to their carriers. Within minutes, they had jumped back to FTL, leaving only scattered sensor data and wounded pride behind. "Well handled," Vaxtol commented. "Though I suspect this won't be the last challenge you face." "Of course not," Dr. Chen agreed. But that's why the Hyperion was built the way it was. Not just as a weapon, but as a teacher. Every engagement is a chance to demonstrate that there's more to power than brute force. As if to emphasize her point, the ship was already powering down its defense systems, the hull returning to its deceptively simple appearance. But now everyone watching knew, this wasn't just a resurrected relic. It was humanity's way of announcing their return to a technological playing field they had never really left. And somewhere in the depths of their quantum memory cores, the ship's logs noted another successful lesson delivered to those who would underestimate human ingenuity. 6 months after the Hyperion's emergence, the waters of the Pacific had become a classroom for the galaxy. Research vessels from dozens of species hovered above the waves, while teams of human and alien scientists worked together aboard the ancient vessel, each discovery revealing new possibilities. The quantum matrices don't just store information, Dr. Chen explained to a group of wide-eyed alien engineers. They store ways of thinking. The Hyperion isn't just teaching us about technology, it's teaching us how our ancestors approached problems. Vax Tull, now the head of the Joint Species Research Initiative, watched as human and alien crews worked side by side. The ship had become more than a technological marvel, it was a bridge between cultures, proof that different paths to advancement could complement rather than compete with each other. Another vessel surfaced near the Mariana Trench, Nix reported, checking his data pad. Early analysis suggests it's a research ship, designed for deep space exploration. The genetic calls have already gone out. The Hyperion had been just the beginning. Across Earth's oceans, more ships were awakening, each designed for different purposes but all sharing the same fundamental approach to technology. A hidden fleet, preserved through centuries, waiting for humanity to mature enough to reclaim it. The Council has approved the formation of the Heritage Integration Commission, Vax Tull announced to the assembled teams. For the first time in galactic history, we're going to formally study how different technological approaches can be combined. The results were already showing promise. Alien quantum computers, integrated with human-designed crystalline matrices, were achieving processing capabilities that neither civilization had thought possible. Human engineers, working with alien materials scientists, were developing new forms of metamaterials that combined the best aspects of both technological traditions. It's not about whose technology is better, Dr. Chen observed, watching a team of Craxus engineers, now allies rather than adversaries, studying the Hyperion's propulsion systems. It's about understanding that there are countless ways to solve the same problem. The ship's AI had become a teacher in its own right, its quantum cores holding not just technical data but philosophical approaches to science and engineering that challenged conventional thinking. Student engineers from across the galaxy now competed for the chance to study aboard what had become known as the University of the Waves. We've confirmed what the original Project Hyperion team suspected, Vax Tull noted, reviewing the latest research data. Some problems are better solved by quantum tunneling, others by manipulating spacetime fields. The best solutions often come from combining approaches no one had thought to put together before. The impact extended beyond technology. The revelation of humanity's hidden technological heritage had changed how other species viewed Earth. No longer were humans seen as newcomers to galactic civilization, they were recognized as a species that had chosen its own path, developing wisdom alongside technology. The Hyperion was never meant to be a weapon, Dr. Chen said during a galactic broadcast marking the ship's first anniversary of reactivation. It was meant to be a reminder that progress isn't just about building bigger or faster machines. It's about understanding when and how to use the knowledge you have. Around the ship, the Pacific glittered under the setting sun. Research vessels from a dozen species shared the waters with human ships, their crews working together to unlock new possibilities. The Craxus, once would-be raiders, had become some of the most enthusiastic students of the Hyperion's hybrid technologies. We're detecting new activations, the ship's AI announced. Deep space beacons, positioned centuries ago. They contain coordinates. Star maps, Vax Tull realized. Your ancestors didn't just hide their ships in the oceans. They left markers in space, didn't they? Dr. Chen nodded, a smile playing at her lips. The Hyperion was never meant to be the end of the story. It's just the beginning. Those beacons will lead us to research outposts, experimental stations, places where our ancestors prepared for the day when humanity would be ready to rejoin the galactic community on our own terms. As night fell over the Pacific, the Hyperion's hull gleamed under the stars, stars that no longer represented a frontier to be conquered, but a future to be explored together. The ship's quantum cores hummed with ancient wisdom and new possibilities, a bridge between past and future, between species and civilizations. Humanity had not just reclaimed its hidden legacy, it had found a way to share it with the galaxy. And somewhere in the depths of space, more secrets waited to be discovered, not by humans alone, but by all species working together, each bringing their own unique approach to understanding the universe's endless mysteries. The age of competition was ending. The age of collaboration had begun. And it had started with an ancient ship, sleeping beneath the waves, waiting for the right moment to awaken and remind humanity, and the galaxy, that the best way forward is rarely the most obvious one.